Hey everyone, Lewis, aka Spider-Man 1991 here with another movie review. This time I'm talking about the latest MCU film, Ant-Man and Wasp. Warning, this review will have spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, please stop watching this video, go see it, then come back. But short spoiler-free review, it's awesome, you should go see it. Alright, and now that's out of the way, I'm going to get into the details, spoilers ahead, so fair warning. First thing I want to talk about is the good. This movie is very fun and hilarious, and throughout all the critic reviews that I've seen, they've all said that's the perfect palate cleanser to what happened in Infinity War, and I could not agree more. This was the right move of Marvel releasing this movie in between Infinity War and the fourth Avengers movie, because it's a good way to get remind people like how much fun the MCU can be. Although the post-credit scene does come back to Infinity War, but I'll get into that later. First off, Paul Rudd, he's still an awesome Ant-Man. If you loved him from the first movie, you'll love him even more in this. He's still funny, he's got lots of energy in this role, and he also does an amazing... One thing I really loved about Paul Rudd's performance of Scott Lang is that he does a good job sort of delivering both the heroic side as Ant-Man and as Scott Lang, Cassie's dad. He doesn't just do the superhero role right, but he also does the role right as Cassie's father, which I thought was very great, very outstanding. Also, there is a great scene where we discovered that the connection between Janet and Scott when Scott was in the quantum realm apparently allows Janet to sort of use Scott as sort of a receiving antenna. And during that time, Paul Rudd kind of has to act like Janet's taken over Scott's body in order to help give Hank and Hope the right coordinates in the quantum realm in order to find her. That was just a really funny scene of seeing like Paul Rudd act like Michelle Pfeiffer. Like, he did a good job with it. I'm not complaining. He did a very good job with it. And long story short, if you love Paul Rudd, you're gonna love him in this movie. Of course, though, he's actually sharing the spotlight with another character, Evangeline Lilly as Hope Van Dyne, aka the Wasp. Evangeline Lilly is just awesome as the Wasp, and just like one of the best superheroes in general. She's got charisma, skills, and she's also got some cool one-liners. Her role in this movie is definitely a lot more fun than Hope in the first Ant-Man movie. And honestly, I think seeing what Hope can do as the Wasp, I don't understand why Hank couldn't have just given her the suit, and then in the first Ant-Man movie, then everyone would probably be better off. Also, Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly have excellent on-screen chemistry, and I think that is definitely something that was important to this movie, because Ant-Man and Wasp are probably one of Marvel's biggest, most recognizable non-mutant duos. And I really liked seeing Scott and Hope working together. I thought they had a great dynamic with each other, and I really hope that we get to see more of that if they do make a third Ant-Man or Ant-Man Wasp sequel. Next up, if you liked Scott's friends, Louis, Dave, and Kurt from the first movie, then you'll be happy because they're back. Although they are excellent supporting characters. Like, they don't show anyone up. They're basically there to add some comedy relief, which is great. Also, if you really loved Louis, played by Michael Pena's recaps of everything, well, you're gonna enjoy the moment where he pretty much has to recap the first Ant-Man film. It's honestly, Michael Pena's performance was probably my favorite things in the first Ant-Man movie, and seeing him do this again for the sequel was fantastic. I liked him a lot, and honestly, I don't think that you can have any more Ant-Man movies unless you have Michael Pena involved. Another thing that I liked about this movie was how it had some deep cuts to Hank Pym's comic book history. We're introduced to Bill Foster, who's played by Lawrence Fishburne, who if you don't know, in the comics, Foster was Hank's assistant, who eventually used his Pym particles to become the superhero Goliath. And that's actually referenced in the film when Foster tells Scott and Hope about Project Goliath, which is pretty much the growth formula for Giant Man, for Scott's Giant Man powers. Another reference to Hank Pym's comic history is a connection to the film's antagonist Ava, aka the Ghost. In the movie, it establishes that Ava is actually the biological daughter of Elias Starr, who in the comics is known as Egghead, who's pretty much Hank Pym's arch nemesis. Also, however, in this movie, Ava is actually Bill Foster's adoptive daughter. Basically, what happened in the movie was Elias Starr tried building a smaller earlier version of Hank Pym's quantum tunnel, which is the device that we see him building in this movie to try to bring Janet back. And when Starr built it, it exploded, and the explosion killed him and his wife, but his daughter survived, but she was pretty much put into a state of quantum flux, which is why she's able to phase through things. However, it's unstable. And Foster found out Ava survived, and he decided to adopt her in order to help figure out a way to cure her. And how is this connected? Well, it turns out the ghost in this movie, the ghost is actually trying to use Hank Pym's lab and the smaller quantum tunnel that Hank is currently building in order to drain the quantum energy from Janet to help permanently stabilize her, so she doesn't have to keep fading in and out. Because we see in the movie that in order to help keep her from fading out of existence, Ava has to sleep for at least 8 hours a day in some sort of quantum chamber. And I really like that addition to what's going on with this version of the ghost, because to me it adds more depth to the character. It makes the villain come off as more sympathetic, and I think that's always something that I like to see in just superhero movies in general, is when they make the villains seem like real people with actual problems instead of just being basically evil for evil's sake. Okay, now I'm going to get into about the mid-credits scene and how it ties into Infinity War. So for the mid-credits scene, we see Scott and the Pyms setting up a smaller quantum tunnel so that Scott could go into the quantum realm again, and this time capture quantum energy in order to help bring it to Ava to help stabilize her. So Scott goes into the quantum realm, he opens up the canister, gets the energy he needs, then calls back and says, "Okay guys, got it, you can pull me out, guys." Then we cut back to the real world, and we see Hank, Janet, and Hope have turned to dust. Even though I said that this movie was a good palate cleanser, that post-credit scene just immediately brought me back down to how sad the ending of Infinity War was. But this post-credit scene was very, very good because it does there is some implications that sort of support a big theory that people have about how the Avengers are gonna fix the damage Thanos did to the universe. And right before Scott leaves for the quantum realm again, Janet warns him to avoid time vortexes. Now, basically the theory that everyone has is that what's going to happen is Scott and the other Avengers are going to have to use the time vortexes in the quantum realm to go back to before Thanos snapped his fingers and took half the life of the universe. And this theory was pretty much supported when some leaked photos from the fourth Avengers movie showed a set that looked like the Battle of New York. Chris Evans was wearing his costume from the Avengers, but we had Robert Downey Jr., who looked a bit older, as well as Scott Lang in his Ant-Man suit, which supported the idea that possibly the Avengers are going to have to go back in time in order to figure out how to stop Thanos. Well, that was everything I loved about Ant-Man. There were a few things that I did have a little issue with, which I will get into now. Okay, here's what I didn't like. There was some really vague explanations for what happened between Scott and Hank and Hope, because at the beginning of the movie, Scott's under house arrest because of, what happened in Civil War. And also, it's pretty much said that he hasn't had any contact with Hope and Hank since Germany. So it's not entirely clear whether Scott cut ties with them or they cut ties with him, most likely the latter. But because by the time Scott's because basically in order to the only reason they work with Scott again is because he's still connected to Janet in the quantum realm. And when they tried accessing the quantum realm, Scott had a vision of one of Janet's memories, but from her point of view. And Scott called Hank and Hope about this, but then destroyed his phone, but then Hope came by and kidnapped him anyway to help them. And there is definitely tension. And even though Hank and Hope are mad at Scott, they pretty much feel like they need him in order to help them because he technically owes them. Here's the thing though, I don't think Scott actually does owe them, because Hank kind of set Scott up to steal the suit, then he got caught because Hope called the police on him, and this is from the first movie. And since then he did work with them for a bit, and it's implied that he did work with them for a bit maybe between Ant-Man and Civil War, but it's never really established. So I find that a little confusing. So I didn't really like how they made it seem like Hank and Hope were forcing Scott to help him, because it really did not paint them off in a good light, especially because they're pretty much compromised, because this happens 3 days before Scott is on house arrest. And I feel like if they had done this, then I feel like they have to do this by a certain time or else they'll lose Janet. And I don't know, I feel like they could have maybe waited a few days until Scott was officially off house arrest, and that way they would lower their risk, but they were desperate. Also, you think Hank, who's pretty much trying to save his wife and has just pretty much reconciled with his daughter, would kind of understand Scott not wanting to get back into this, because he's pretty much in a good place with his daughter, his ex-wife, and he's slowly building up a new business with his ex-con buddies. So I don't know. So it really did not make Hank seem like a good guy. Also, they keep playing on the whole will they won't they aspect with Scott and Hope's relationship, because yes, in the end of the first Ant-Man, they kissed, but then never saw anything else. And when Scott's talking to Hope about how they make a good team and stuff, it's implied that they did have some history. But then by the end of the movie, we see them on a date with Cassie in one of the shrunken cars, using the laptop as like a little drive-in, which was a nice scene. There would be a bit more confirmation about whether or not they are in a relationship or something, because I really can't stand will they won't they elements in like anything. If they keep doing it in like movies or TV shows, when they keep like playing with it or stringing it along, I'm just like, okay, either get together or don't. Come on. Alright, despite my minor complaints, here's my final verdict. Ant-Man and the Wasp is a great movie. I loved it. It was very funny, very humorous, entertaining. It's a very lighter tone, which I think is a good counterpoint to Infinity War. It's something that I think everyone should see right after Infinity War, and especially before Avengers 4. Also, the addition of Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp definitely makes up for her lack of a bigger role in the first movie. Overall, if you like the first Ant-Man movie, then you're definitely going to love this one. Alright, that's it for me. Thank you again for watching. Remember to check out my other videos. Like this video and subscribe. Stay notified. You can either hit the bell icon or follow me on Twitter. Link is in the description below. I'm Spider-Man 1991 saying later days.